amazing Savior, our friend, our brother, our looking glass that allows us to enter your throne room, Jesus Christ, whom we pray. Amen.
Well, we've mentioned it a couple times this morning already, but I want to one more time kind of reiterate just how excited we are leading up to Easter. It's really crazy to think that this time last year, we had no clue what we were about to step into. I think it was either maybe next Sunday or the following Sunday when we had to pivot within just a couple days' notice to online worship, and we were online for about 3 months. And it was funny because Gabrielle and I, we were talking through plans for Easter and praying through, and we were like, yeah, we're going to be back ready for Easter in person, all this stuff, and that did not happen. But this year, man, we are excited that we get to celebrate Easter together in person. And even if you're worshiping online with us, you'll still be able to worship. Even though it'll be online, you'll still be able to be a part of that. We'll have that live service instead of a pre-recorded one. We're really excited about it. So I sure hope that you're going to be signing up for the 21 Days of Hope that leads up to Easter. And I also hope that you'll sign up for one of our 2 Easter, that's crazy even for me to say, one of our 2 Easter services here on Easter, either 9 o'clock or 11. I don't know that we've never had 2 services when I've been here in the 7 years that I've been here. So that's just exciting that God is encouraging and blessing people to come. There's the website links for both of those things are in your bulletin, so you can go there and sign up for both of those. Now I want you to think for a moment about what is your all-time favorite TV series. Kind of think about that. Maybe even if you're sitting next to somebody, maybe lean over and kind of share with them your favorite TV series. If you're online, maybe put in the chat there your favorite TV series. Maybe it's a sitcom. Maybe it's a comedy. Maybe it's a drama show or whatever, or some kind of action show or whatever. I think for me, because I got several, but one of my favorite TV series, it's no longer on TV anymore, has to be Lost. The show Lost. Back in 2004, it lost some of you, that's right. Back in 2004, ABC premiered this show. The pilot of this show, within it, I mean, right away from the get-go, it was just kind of crazy. These people, they crash land on an island, and some of them survive, and when they have to, figure out how to provide, because everybody thinks, we've crash landed. Surely, the air traffic controllers knew where we were, and they saw that we went down, and they're going to send rescue, they're going to send help. But then they find the pilot, and moments before he dies, he lets them know that they were thousands of miles off course. Their radio had been broken. There's no way that anybody knew where they were, and so they had to figure out how to survive. And because it's a TV show, there's all kinds of twists and surprises and unexpected things that happened there. And this show went for 6 seasons, and it finally ended in May of 2010. And I got to tell you that was one of those shows that, like, in some ways, this is going to sound pathetic, but I felt like in some ways our week kind of revolved around it. We'd kind of we would end an episode and we're like, oh, we got to wait a whole nother week till the show comes on again. And then, a lot of times it was either Wednesday or Thursday. We'd roll around to Monday, like, oh, we're almost to Lost. And we would have Lost parties and all kinds. I know I'm a dork, whatever. But we all have those shows that we love like that. And for me, it was Lost. And I think we have all probably been lost at some point in our life. Maybe you've been lost driving somewhere. With the dawn of GPS on our phones and stuff, man, there's just almost no excuse now for getting lost, but yet we still somehow find a way to get lost. Maybe you've been lost on a walk. I've gone on, hikes and things like that and found myself getting lost, literally lost, not sure where I am or how to get out or get back to where I was on those walks and stuff. I've been lost in hospitals. I don't know who it is that designs hospitals, but they are the most worst designed places to get to anywhere. I mean, the very fact that they have to put every hospital has their own thing where it's follow the blue line on the floor, follow the fish to the children's wing. I mean, it's ridiculous. You can get lost in hospitals so easily. I've even been lost in church buildings. When I was a kid, I was with my youth group, and we were at a convention in Atlanta, Georgia, at this huge church, and we went exploring for something. I don't know why. I mean, we were teenagers. We probably, who knows what we were trying to do, and we literally got lost in the church building, and eventually found our way back to where we were. We all have been lost at some point in time, and sometimes there are those moments when you're lost, depending on where you are, that like the fear sets in. You're like, oh my goodness, I am lost right now, because there's no telling when you're going to make it back, or if you're going to make it back to where you were, or if you're going to find the people, or whatever it might be. Being lost can be kind of a scary thing. Today, we're going to look at Jesus' parables, 3 parables that Jesus is going to tell, focused around 3 different lost things. Now, I want you to remember a couple things about parables. We talked about this a few different times, that what a parable is all about. A parable is just basically a story that Jesus, specifically in these situations, that Jesus made up to make a point, to teach a lesson. I've talked about this before, that a lot of times, it's difficult to remember a lesson, but it's easier to remember the story that will then teach us the lesson. I've often said, that don't be a dummy might be hard to remember, but the story that taught us not to be a dummy is a lot easier to remember for us. But there's also a couple of things about parables or illustrations that I want you to keep in mind, whether it's Jesus's parables or even, illustrations that maybe I might make when I preach or whatever, or other people when they're teaching and preaching. And one of those things is that a parable and an illustration, it's all about the lesson. I think sometimes we can try and pick apart the story and pick apart those things, and we miss totally what's the point of the story. And I don't know about that. I don't know if that would really work. It's like you're missing the point altogether. And then the other thing is that they have limitations. I mean, obviously, we are trying to teach timeless truths with a story that we can come up with. And so I don't want us to get caught up in some of the specifics or the details of these stories and miss what Jesus is getting at. In fact, it's kind of ridiculous, because we as 21st century Westerners, we like specifics. We like details. And sometimes when we go to God's Word, that's how we expect God's Word to be for 21st century Westerners. But that's not how it was written. That's not the people that wrote it, and that's not who they were writing to. And so for them, it wasn't about the specifics. It was about the point and the lesson. And so today, I want you to make sure that you don't miss the point and the lesson that Jesus is trying to convey with these parables. So we're going to be in Luke chapter 15. We're kind of in the middle of the book of Luke, and we have about 5 more weeks until Easter, until we get to the end of our series on the book of Luke. So we're going to pick up in verse 1, and today, much to Troy's chagrin in preparing the slides for today, we're going to do the whole chapter of chapter 15. There was really, as I was kind of studying and preparing, I thought, well, maybe I can just kind of summarize it. Nah, man, we're going to do the whole thing today. So let's jump into this. We're going to do the first 2 verses first, and then we're going to do the long haul in a little bit. But it says in verse 1 of chapter 15, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" And before we get into the actual parables, let's kind of catch the context of what's going on. It's important that we understand who it is that Jesus is speaking to, and it's also important that we understand who is around and still hearing what's going on. Jesus is kind of surrounded by a group of tax collectors and sinners. Now, tax collectors, that's easy to figure out who these people are. They are tax collectors. They are the people who are collecting taxes. But the problem is that people have with these tax collectors is that they worked for the government, so people didn't like them. And then on top of that, when they were tasked with going out and collecting taxes, they would also take a little bit extra to fill their pockets. And so they were seen as traitors to their own people. But then it also says that there were these sinners that were around them. And that's a pretty broad and wide term there to just say there were sinners. We don't know specifically who these people were. It could have been a sinful lifestyle that they had chosen to live, that they were being labeled sinners. They could have even been people that were just ill or in bad health. A lot of times in those days that people would see this as sort of a sign that God was sort of cursing them because of their sin. And so sometimes they would refer to people who were sick for a long period of time and in poor health as sinners. Or it could have just been people that some people viewed as being ungodly. They looked at them and said, well, they must be sinners. They must not be very godly for whatever reasons they may have come up with. But these people, they were gathering around Jesus, it said. And why were they there? Why were they there around Jesus? Well, they were there because they wanted to hear Jesus teach. They weren't there to argue with him. They weren't there to fight with him. They weren't there to call him judgmental. They were there for Jesus and for his teaching. But then we see these other people that I guess were kind of nearby, these Pharisees, these religious leaders. And it seems like they're mad, like always, at Jesus because he's associating with these people that it says that he welcomed them and that he was eating with them. You see, unfortunately, these religious leaders, they took the teachings of the Old Testament to the most extreme degree and began to kind of miss the point of it. And what I mean is you see passages like in Psalm chapter 1 and verse 1, the very beginning of Psalm, it says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers." And this is truth. This is God's word. This is God's teaching, God's standards. But the purpose and the intent of this teaching here is for not for us to sort of like gauge who is better than others and I'm more holy than you, so I can't be around you. The point was for people to understand that we can be influenced with those that we associate with. Those that we are around, they influence us. But this, like so many other things, the Pharisees and the religious leaders, they took it too far. And what's ironic is that you would think that Jesus would be surrounded by the religious people, right? You would think that the ones who are labeled the religious leaders, you would think they would be the ones that would want to hear these teachings. They would be the ones that would be clamoring to try and get close to him, but they were not. In fact, in my mind, when I read this, the way I kind of picture in my head from the phrasing is almost like they're off to the side, just kind of eavesdropping, just kind of murmuring under their breath and talking about these people. But Jesus is about to drop a bomb of truth, not on these sinners, but on the holier than thous. And even before we get to the parables, even before we even get to Jesus making his point here, what we see is that about Jesus' teaching, his life, his ministry, everything, we see that Jesus loves sinners. He does. He loves sinners. Because make no mistake, friends, Jesus was here on earth for sinners. Right at the very beginning of his ministry, Jesus makes it very clear in what he says. In Luke 5, we saw this early on in our series. In verse 31, it's recorded, it says, Jesus answered them and says, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick." Duh! "I have not come to call the righteous, but the sinners to repentance." And we've seen this throughout Luke's gospel, and we see this throughout the other gospels, the record of Jesus' life and ministry over and over again, that Jesus wasn't here for the spiritually elite. He was here for those who needed him. And truthfully, the spiritually elite were also some of those ones that needed him. But we see it in the example of who his disciples were that he called. We see it in the examples of who he would spend time with, eating with them, the crowds that he would allow to be around him. They weren't the spiritual elite. They were the ones with the bad past, and some of them with the bad present. They were the ones that didn't know all the right things to say, didn't know all the right things to do. They didn't have all the spiritual knowledge. They didn't know all the traditions. And these are exactly the people that Jesus came to love and to minister to. The Apostle Paul kind of got this, and he writes to his young student Timothy about this. In 1 Timothy 1, it's recorded. He says, "Here's a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance." This is basically Paul saying, hey, Timothy, tune in. You need to hear this. "Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am the worst. But for that very reason I was shown mercy, so that in me, the worst of sinners, Christ Jesus might display his immense patience as an example for those who would believe in him and receive eternal life." You see, Jesus loves sinners. And the parables that we're about to look at confirm this, and they show Jesus' heart for us, people who get caught up in sin. So, let's buckle in. Let's get ready let's get our thumbs warmed up. If you're following along on your digital device, get our finger. You can lick your own finger. I go to lick my finger to get papers for people, and I can't do it because I have a mask on. But you can lick your own finger for your own pages in your Bible today. Let's get ready. Here we go. Verse 3. "Then Jesus told this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me. I found my lost sheep.' I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin." In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of in the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided up his property between them. Not long after that, the young son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, kissed him. The son said to his father, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven. I have sinned against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to the servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard the music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" Here we find in the middle of Luke's gospel these 3 parables that I believe sum up everything that Jesus is about. And I want us to take the rest of the time to kind of pick apart some of the important lessons that we find in these parables. And the first thing that jumps out to me whenever I study these things is that there are different ways to be lost. There really are different ways that we can find ourselves lost from Christ. Did you notice the different ways that happened in these parables? The first parable with the sheep and how it kind of wandered off, or maybe it got caught up in snacking on the nice green grass and then didn't notice that the flock had moved, that the shepherd had moved them. I mean, sheep don't exactly pay attention to a lot of stuff. That's why they need a shepherd. That's why it's important for the shepherd to protect and to guide and to lead the sheep. All they pretty much care about is filling their stomachs. And sometimes we can get kind of caught up in the same way. And I believe that this way of getting lost would be what I would call ignorance. Of us getting lost in ignorance. The sheep doesn't choose to get lost. It goes to places that it doesn't understand. It tries to do things it doesn't know how to do. And in life, sometimes we do the same thing. We step into those areas of life that we really have no business being a part of. And we do it out of ignorance. But it's interesting that Peter would later on write this in his letter to Christians worldwide. In 1 Peter 5:8, it's recorded. He says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." You see, we can easily find ourselves in danger. and not even mean to be in these places that we end up, but in our ignorance, we find ourselves there. But then we see the parable with the lost son, the young man who goes to his father, and even though the father hasn't passed away yet, he asks for his inheritance. And we all know how an inheritance works. There's kind of a prerequisite step that comes before getting the inheritance. Your parents have to pass away, right? You don't just kind of get it early, but he goes and he asks for it anyways. And then he takes it and he wastes it all, and he finds himself at a pretty low point in his life. And while the sheep got lost through ignorance, this son got lost through pride. And this young man was more concerned about himself and his desires and his experiences. And I have to tell you, I still hear people talk about this today. Everyone from young to old alike, this sentiment of, well, I deserve this. I mean, I've earned this. This should be for me. I should be able to enjoy these things. I should be able to have this. This is what I deserve. I've earned these things. But we do it all at the expense then of everyone else, which really is the essence of pride. Living our life for our joy at the expense of everyone else. But Proverbs 11:2, it tells us when pride comes, then comes disgrace. Or Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. And Proverbs 29:23, pride brings a person low. And if we're not careful, our pride or our ignorance can bring us to places that we never meant to be at before. But how come, when we look at these things and we get in a spot where we feel that we're lost and we feel that this is kind of, we feel like we're out on our own. Sometimes we can feel like there's no hope. Sometimes we can feel like, we're just kind of out there and I don't know if I'm ever going to make it back. But there's a great promise that's buried within these parables, and that is that Jesus is searching for us. And I think the way that each of these individuals in these parables that go out looking, I think this is exactly how Jesus looks for us. The shepherd, he says to the rest of his sheep, okay, look, I need y'all to stay right here, okay? I need you to stay here in the open country. I need to go find this other one. Stay where you know you're supposed to stay. Do what you know you're supposed to do. I need to go and look for the lost one. The woman who lost the coin, she is looking out of desperation. I love how Luke is a details guy. And so even in his account of Jesus' story, he catches these details about how she lights a lamp, lights a candle to be able to see. I mean, it's probably dark then. That means it's probably at night. She's not going to wait till the morning. She wants to look for this coin right now because you probably know how it is. When things go lost, if you don't find them soon, they usually stay lost. And this woman doesn't want to wait for it. She even sweeps out her whole house. She goes to great lengths to find this coin. Or even the father. Though he doesn't go to the pig pen where his child is, he is looking and looking and looking for his son. And when he sees that child finally coming home, finally coming back to him, he runs to his child. You see, Jesus is searching for us. He so desperately wants us back. And for Jesus, no one is too insignificant. No one is too insignificant. The shepherd has 99 other sheep, right? I mean, come on, it's just one more sheep. It might earn you a little bit more money, but how valuable can one more? You'll be fine with that's not how the shepherd thinks. Or the woman. We all lose money. No one wants to lose money. We hate that, right? But come on, it's just a coin, and you can wait till the morning. Just hang on till you get till morning, till the sun's up. You got good light. Maybe some people can come and help you out. No, she needs to find it now. And the son, it could have been easy for this father to write off his son. Who knows how long the time goes by in that pain of a child leaving, of a child living in a life that is not the kind of life you hoped and you prayed for them. He could have come back and said, how dare you come to me and demand my inheritance and then treat me like this. He could have reacted like the older brother and said, you're not worthy to be my son. But the father was desperate to have his son back. You see, no one is too insignificant for the father. It doesn't matter your past. Doesn't matter the baggage that you still carry, the issues that maybe you still haven't worked through even now, the pain that you've caused to yourself or to others. Each and every person matter to Jesus. In Matthew 10:29, Jesus said, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside of your Father's care. And even the very hairs on your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows." The 19th century Danish philosopher by the name of Soren Kierkegaard once told a parable of a man who owned a jewelry shop, and he closed it up one night, and then thieves broke in that night after everything was kind of locked up. The thieves broke in, but they stole nothing. Instead, they took the price tags and they switched them all around. So when the shopkeeper opened up the next day, he began to sell things, expensive things sold for cheap, and cheap things sold at a high cost. And Kierkegaard's point was, this is how we live our lives so often. We have an upside down and backwards view of things that really value. We put such great and high value on things that do not matter, that really in some ways are just garbage. But we put such small value on things that really do matter. But that's not how Jesus sees us. He puts great value on each and every one of us. There was even a situation we see later on in Luke 19 where Jesus goes to Zacchaeus' house, another tax collector, and he says this while he's there. He says, "For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." And if you're in a place in your life where you feel like you don't matter, you feel like you aren't loved, you feel like you've done too many bad things, you feel like you've done not enough good things, you feel like you're too far from God, if that's you, then you need to realize that Jesus has never stopped searching for you. Which kind of brings us to the very last thing about these parables that sometimes gets overlooked and sometimes gets missed, that we can't miss here. And that is that Jesus celebrates saving. He celebrates it when someone is saved. In each of these parables, they celebrated when they found that lost thing. When he finds the lost sheep, they celebrate. When she finds the lost coin, they celebrate. I mean, you might think, a coin? You're going to celebrate about that? There's a good chance that the way they understood this when Jesus taught this parable is that this was a day's wage. And when they find it, they celebrate. And when the son comes home, they celebrate. And I want us to kind of just zero in on this son and the father's story. The son, he comes and he arrogantly asks his father for his share of the estate before the father's death. I mean, you're supposed to wait till the end because who knows what may happen within that father's lifespan. Maybe his estate would grow, maybe his estate would diminish. But he comes and he says, "Hey, I want my share now." And then he takes it and he blows it all on himself and on wild living, and he disgraces his family name in this way. And then he comes to his senses. And he says, "Well, I'm working in this pigsty and in this filth," and he realizes that he could go home to his father because he could at least be a servant, at least be a slave. And he thinks, I'm going to have to go home. I'm probably going to have to earn my keep. I'm probably going to have to learn my father's trust and my father's love again. And so he heads home. And while he's kind of going home, he's working on his speech. You ever had to do that before? Kind of work out the speech? Man, there have been many times I can remember as a teenager working on the speech. I remember one night coming home. I think curfew was like 11, and I got home maybe 11:30, 45, 50, something like that. And in fact, I lived out in York County, and I dated a girl in Smithfield, and I loved the James River Bridge because I could blame it on a bridge lift. Oh, there was a bridge lift. I got stuck. You know, it's like, what boats are coming through at that? But whatever. But I remember one night getting home and driving home well after curfew, kind of playing up that speech, figuring out my excuse in my head and my apology of how I'm going to say it, what I'm going to do when I get home. And I remember coming inside, shutting the door, and my dad was there in the kitchen, putting his shoes on. This was before the dawn of cell phones. He couldn't just call. He was getting ready to go out and look for me because he had no idea where I was, and I was so late coming home. I don't even remember what happened after that. I probably don't want to remember what happens after that. But this son, he works up his speech, he works up his excuse, he works up his apology, and he gets ready to deliver it, and he starts into it. And I don't know if you catch it or not, but as he is explaining and apologizing to the father like almost ignores the explanation. He ignores the excuse and the apology. And he says, get the best robe. He tells his servants, go and get the best robe. And a robe for them would show a sign of sonship, of him basically saying, you're a part of this family again. It says, get the ring. Bring me this ring. The ring would probably have the family seal on it and would show that he is being restored as the firstborn again. He says, bring sandals. In those days, to not have shoes or sandals would be a sign of poverty. Him saying, you're no longer going to live in a life of poverty. You're a part of this family again. And then he says, kill and cook the fattened prize calf, because we are going to party tonight because my son is home. And friends, this is how God reacts when his lost children come home. I mean, but why would he do that? Why would he celebrate? Why would this father celebrate this punk coming back? Why would he allow him to go out and to display his family name in this way and to dishonor him this way? It's the same reason that God still celebrates saving today. He celebrates when a person that is caught up and stifled by comparison and weighed down by worrying how they can impress people, when they finally begin to let go of that need for a sense of approval and they begin to find their approval and love in God. He celebrates when a person who is caught up in addiction finally acknowledges the problem within their life and seeks help. He celebrates when that person finally recognizes that they need to get their life together, but they have no idea how to get their life together. You see, God still celebrates when his children come home and are found, because he loves you and I just that much. So the point of all these things, these parables, you know, I often think sometimes we can study things like this. We can study on our own. We can read passages of Scripture that are powerful like this. We can get together and we can study them together in like these kind of ways. But it means nothing if we don't step back and say, but what about my life? What does this mean for me? And so I think each of us need to answer the question, who am I in these parables? Maybe you're the sheep. Maybe you're that sheep that you've kind of buried your head in life. You've buried your head in your family, in your work, in whatever it might be, and you've gotten so consumed. Maybe you've even buried your head in the good things in life, and you have gotten so focused in on those things that you have no clue where you've brought yourself. And you pick your head up in those moments of clarity and you say, where am I? How did I get here? Maybe that's you. Maybe you're like that coin that through no circumstances that are in your control, circumstances beyond your control, you find yourself in a place of being completely lost. Or maybe you're that child and in your arrogance decided that doing things your way would be better than doing things God's way, doing things your Father's way. And you found yourself knee deep in the muck and the mire of sin. Or maybe you're even the older sibling. Maybe you're one that's been living close to the Father all of these years, but you've just been standing at a distance, seeing all the other people, all the other younger brothers, younger siblings, and just judging them. Just pointing your finger, just shaking your head, thinking to yourself, how dare they? And never realizing the sin in your own life. Friends, no matter who you are in these parables, you need to understand that God is searching for you. God is searching. Even that older sibling. You know, Jesus said that the father went out to find the older sibling because he was like, he should be in here too. Jesus is searching for all of us. And he is just waiting for us to return home. And I know returning home can be a scary thing, an intimidating thing, a thing that kind of puts us uneasy, saying, I don't know about this. You see, there will probably be those older siblings, so to speak, like in the parable in our life, people that look at us and we worry that they're judging us and thinking about what they may say. But friends, I can guarantee you this, there will definitely be the Father who is waiting there with open arms, waiting there with a robe, waiting there with a ring, waiting there with sandals, and waiting there ready to celebrate your return home. Let me pray for us. Father, we find ourselves at times in life lost. We find ourselves at times in life in places, in practices, amongst people, maybe, amongst groups, amongst things that you never intended for us to be. And God, I pray that this morning, I pray that each one of us, I pray that there is not a single person in this room that has not taken a moment. And if they haven't yet, God, would you pierce that hardened heart of theirs, that they would take that moment to pause and look at their life and ask the question, where am I with my Lord? Have I in my good intentions buried my head in my work, in my family, in my life, whatever it might be, and walked so far from you that I have no idea where I am? Or maybe there's people here this morning that in their arrogance have walked away from you, but now are recognizing the desperate need to come back to you because they need your help. They need your forgiveness. They need to be back home with you. God, I don't know where different people are in this room, but Lord, I pray that you would help each one of us to be very real and be very honest with ourselves and with you where we are, and then to do something about it.